What's up, guys? Hope you guys are doing fantastic today. I am chilling back in the co-working spot. My main man, Ryan Hill, is here. He's off doing a call with a potential client right now. And I wanted to hop on here and do some Q&A with you guys, just to get some of you the help that you need to be able to move forward, to be able to buy deals. So post your questions in the comments. I've got a bunch of questions that people sent in, and I'm going to pull those up as well. I'm just going to make sure our audio is also working and everything's cool here. Let's see. Yeah, we're good. Word. So yeah, let me know what questions you guys have. And I'm going to start reading because I got some questions through email about anything at all. Okay. So post your questions in the comments. I'm looking at the comments. One question I got was about building a team. How do you build a team to invest in rental properties? Okay. And if anyone's watching this, they don't know me, you don't know my story that well. I started out as a wholesaler, flipper, had the big business doing 100 deals a year, didn't like it, switched to buying rentals, quickly got a few dozen rentals, got enough rentals to pay the bills, so I crossed that proverbial finish line of financial freedom, and now I get to do what I want with my time. What I love to do is help people. So that is why I'm qualified to sit here with you guys and teach you how to do this, okay? When it comes to building a team, you don't need to overthink it, okay? You can literally just start with 2 people, your contractor and your property manager, and that's it. The reason for that is if you're going to invest in a new town, if you picked like Mobile, Alabama or something, like I'm just assuming you probably aren't from there, you don't know anything about that town, so let's pretend you're going to invest there. You would need to know what are the good areas of town to invest in, which ones to stay away from, and a property manager is going to tell you that. You would need to know how much money it would cost to fix up a property, and the contractor would tell you that, okay? And the property manager would also tell you how much work you need to put into it. Do you need to put in granite? Do you need to put in vinyl floors or carpet in this area? Do you need to do like window units versus HVAC? What do tenants expect in this neighborhood to pay $800 a month or whatever? So the property manager and the contractor kind of tag team to teach you that. And you also need a home inspector too. It's important to have that person to go over there and do a thorough inspection of the property. But that's it, okay? So don't worry that much about team building. It's not nearly as important as a lot of people think it is, okay? The next question I got sent in was about market selection, okay? So how to pick the right market. That is, and I've done quite a bit of content about this, but that is so important right now, okay? So if you are trying to pick the right market to invest in, but you have no idea what to do, how to get started, you're gonna wanna pick a market that's not super difficult to find deals in. Guys, I'm telling you, everyone right now is making the mistake of fighting for deals in markets that are way too expensive, way too competitive. And it's real hard to do investing that way. And what do people typically do when something's hard? They run, they turn and run the other direction. And isn't it kind of sad that somebody who might have otherwise actually taken to real estate and been successful and built wealth and quit their job and spent time with their family, but they tried to invest in Austin, Texas, and they tried for 6 months and they couldn't find any deals. because it's way too expensive, way too competitive. And so they just quit and they went on to some new shiny object, some new money-making thing that probably is not as good as real estate, right? So I don't want this to be super hard for you guys to get your next 1, 2, 3 rental properties, okay? It shouldn't be like pulling teeth to find deals. And in order to do that, you need to pick a market that is not popular, that is not big, that is not growing, that is not getting more expensive over time. Generally, that would be good advice. Buy something that will appreciate, but no one's really having a lot of success finding deals in markets that are really appreciating right now. Because I work with dozens of clients every single week. I invest, so I really have a finger on the pulse of what's working for people. And the clients that are getting the deals, buying the most rentals that work with me closely, are buying in what you call a linear market. Okay, that means flat, that means no growth, that means not much competition. I also want you guys in markets with like 250,000 people or less, smaller towns, okay, 100,000 is a good size, 150. I don't want you in these popular markets where everyone's like, oh, it's so hard to find a deal here. Because it doesn't have to be that way. And until things cool off, you need to pick a market that's more linear. Go to my blog, brianellwood.net/blog. I did a post today. Okay, so it'll be at the top. It says like the 8 pillars of cash flowing linear market or something like that. Make a note to read that entire blog post after you get off this. I promise you that will clear everything up for you. And there's also a part 1 to that, and there's a link in the part 2, so you can go back and read part 1. But that's like all I have to say about market selection, because if you read those blog posts, you'll know exactly what to do, okay? Sipping some rosé kombucha here. It's not rosé wine, not yet. All right, next question is, the next question I got emailed to me was about finding the money. And that used to be the number 1 question by far. And by the way, if you guys are watching this live, you have a question, type in the comments because I'm refreshing those. I do not see any questions yet, so you guys must have everything figured out. I'm playing. But yeah, money, right? Money is the big elephant in the room. So here's some quick thoughts on that. If you have cash, if you have a bunch of cash, so I work with clients sometimes that have $50,000, $100,000 in the bank. They will have an easier time doing their first handful of deals because they could get a deal under contract and then like it only appraises for X amount, the bank will only loan them X amount, and so they like have to bring $10K to the table, right? And they can do that because they have the money, right? What's up, Coleman? What's up, Luis? I see your questions. I'll get to that in just 1 second. So those people have an easier time. And I do recommend that you have some savings, okay? So if you guys are watching this and you're like, I do not have even 3 months of personal expenses saved up. I don't even have like beyond, or if you do have that, you know, do you even have like 5 or 10K on top of that? If you don't, I'm going to recommend that you do not go out and purchase a property today, because I don't want there to be a ton of strain and pressure on you making sure you get everything exactly right. If you're not working with someone who's going to help you look at your deals, look at your contractor estimates, look at your inspection, help you double check your ARV and your rent estimates and like everything about the deal, then you could end up like overlooking something that was an extra $5,000. That's really not a big deal. I've done that so many times. It's easy to do. But if you don't have the $5,000, your house is going to sit there empty until you save it up, and then you can like buy the HVAC or pay for the mold removal that you didn't know you were going to have to pay for. So that's a little piece about like how much money do you need to get started. But if you have a little bit of padding, like you're not gonna go broke if something happens, then you can go out and do deals that require none of your own money. In fact, Ryan, who's here, he's one of my clients that we work together now. You guys might know him or talk to him. He has 3 houses and he's put a total of $700 into those houses. Okay, so he went out and negotiated an amazing offer on 3 houses, seller financing with an owner. And like Blake, one of my other clients who has like close to 10 rentals now, has put very little of his own money in because he's doing BRRRR deals. So he's getting in at a price where the lenders will loan him all of the money, right, for purchase plus the rehab. And then when he goes to get it appraised, he only owes 70 or 80% of what it appraises at, which means a bank will give you all of the money you need to pay off that lender, and then you're in a longer term loan. So I hope that makes sense. As far as finding the money, but like you want to have a little padding, and then you want to go out and do deals with as little of your money as possible. I just made an offer on a house in Little Rock, $45K. I did $0 down, monthly payments $300 for 5 years. I'm going to see if the guy takes it. If he does, how much did I pay for that property? 0. I might have to pay some closing costs, right? But that's what you want to do, okay? That's gonna get you at scale the fastest. You guys wouldn't believe how many people I talk to that say like, well, Brian, you know, if I have to save about 15 or 20% down for every deal I do, I'm gonna run out of money by the 3rd deal. I'm like, of course you are. Everyone would. That's a terrible strategy. You don't need a down payment every time you buy a rental property. That is a false belief, okay? I don't ever put down payments down like that. No one does, okay, if they know what they're doing. So learning that skill is crucial. Coleman Ross says more on private money. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you specifically want to know? And I'll come right back to you just to make sure I answer your question right. Louise says, hey Brian, are these linear properties in C neighbors? I'm guessing you mean neighborhoods. Well, so a linear market really refers to the whole market, right? The whole market as a whole. Like a market is linear if the house prices are not going up. A market is linear if the population is not going up. Not going down either, okay? Like flat. That would be a linear market, okay? And within that linear market though, you're going to have cheap properties, expensive properties, and everything in between, right? So linear markets would still have $1 million house here or there. There's gonna be some ritzy neighborhoods. There's gonna be some D-class neighborhoods where you can probably get a house for 10, 15K, 20K, but you wanna stay out of because there's too much crime, too much vacancies. So linear markets will have all the different economic classes or whatever it's called. But C-class neighborhoods are typically where you want to be. It's like that sweet spot. Because if you go worse than that, you have too high of vacancies, too high of repairs. If you go better than that, B-class, A-class, the cash flow goes away. Because now you're spending $250,000 to buy a house that only rents for $1,800 a month. So you're like less than the 1% rule. So in an ideal world, you would find A-class neighborhoods where you could get positive cash flow, right? But that's just not the reality of it. So as you kind of go down the scale, well, let's see what the ratio is with B's. Oh, it's still too tight. Let's see what the ratio is in the C's. There it is. It's perfect. And then D, you'll still get the rent to price ratio on paper, but in the real world, you'll have lots of problems with those properties. So I hope that answered that question. And let me know what other questions you guys have. Another question I got was about business setup. So it's like, do I need an LLC? Do I do it in my personal name? Bank account, stuff like that. If you're doing deals right now and you don't have a separate bank account set up, then you need to do that right away and start running everything through that bank account. Everything. It doesn't matter. If you buy a book on real estate for $8, you swipe it on that account, Okay, you sign up to be a Bigger Pockets Pro member. You put it on your investing account. If you go out to eat and you talk to somebody about real estate, you put it on your investing account. You need to start categorizing your tax write-offs in one space. You don't want to like save receipts and put things on spreadsheets to do this. A bank account is the organizing mechanism for all of your accounting, okay? You could, in theory, just start the bank account and not look at anything, just use the card for everything, and then as your rental properties get rented and the rent comes in, it comes into that account too. And then 6, 9, 12 months later, go find like a bookkeeper and a CPA, and they can sort all that shit out for you by going back and looking at all your statements and asking you all the questions. The only problem with that, though, is you need to remember what those charges were from a year ago so they can correctly categorize them. I've made that mistake of not doing that, and then I didn't know what a charge was, and I didn't get to, write it off or whatever properly. So get a separate bank account, and then whether or not you invest in an LLC or a personal name is important, because one, you're going to put that bank account in that name, either the LLC or your name. But also it affects a lot of things, okay? Like, so LLCs, some banks won't loan to LLCs. They make you keep it in your personal name if you want those 30-year mortgage at the lowest interest rate, like the ones that everybody wants. You can only get 10 of those maximum, okay? It's like legally you can only have 10 mortgages. So if you want to scale, if you want 20, 30, 40, 50 houses, you're going to have to find other ways to finance deals past those 10, 30-year conventional spots. So that personal name 30-year route is, finite. It does have an end where you're going to have to like get into seller financing, get into commercial loans, get into, doing like balloon loans where like I can get loans from my commercial bank, or I can get loans from like an institutional lender for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years. And you can get an infinite amount of those, and they'll write those to your LLC, which is nice, right? So the LLC is like liable for the loan. I like the LLC route because it does offer some protection, but not a lot. You need to get an extra liability policy on top of that, which doesn't cost a lot and protects you from a lot of things that the LLC won't. But I like how the LLC takes what you're doing and it makes it like this separate business that's separate from you, right? So it's like, it's on the business, the expenses are on the business. The business is making money, the business has expenses, I can write things off on the business has its own bank account separate from me. The houses are in the name of the business, not my name. I like that separateness, but at the end of the day, talk to your CPA about this. Cool. All right, that's all I'm going to say about business setup, because it's boring and it's not like the most important thing. All right, Austin, I see your question. Austin says, there's a house I'm looking at with a month-to-month tenant, livable but needs updates, 41K, 10K. So you'd be all in about 51, 775. Do you keep a tenant? Those numbers sound pretty good, by the way. Do you keep a tenant and do the maintenance deferred, or do private money lenders not like doing the maintenance later? I think what you're asking is like, would the lender like loan you the money to do the repairs later? So that the private money lender is going to loan you for the rehab only if you're going to do the rehab within the term of their loan. So let's say, like 6 months or 12 months is a common private money lending term. You would have to do the rehab within the term of that loan in order for them to even give you that 10K you say you're going to need. So you can, if it's livable, you could just buy it for 41K, keep renting it for that 775. It sounds like you have a tenant. Yeah, you do, month-to-month tenant. And you could just ride that out for a while. Or you could go ahead and borrow the 10K, you could fix it up, and then you're in it for 51. So the deal gets a little tighter, but then hopefully you could raise that rent to maybe $900 a month at that point. You can really do it either way, man. Like if you want to keep that property for the long term, I kind of like the idea of just doing it now, because when you go to refi out of the private money loan, the bank's going to do an appraisal, and the appraiser's going to go in that property and they're going to check and see what updates were done and all that, and then they're going to give you 70 or 75% of whatever that appraisal comes back at. So the appraisal is going to come back lower if you don't do the updates. And then also, you know, you'll only owe $40 something thousand if you don't do the updates. And the weird thing is that banks do not often loan that small of an amount. I know this sounds silly, but you need to check with some local banks in your market to see what their minimum loan size is. Okay, I see 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 often. So the funny part is, like, you want to owe more so that you can hit a minimum loan size with a bank. Banks don't want to do a 5, 10, 20, 30-year loan for $40,000 because it's not that valuable to them. They don't make that much money on it. There's more risk than reward, apparently. And I guess they've learned that higher loan sizes are more secure because it's probably loaned against a more valuable, nicer piece of property, right? So you would want to see what those banks' minimum loan amounts are and actually try to hit it, but you also want to stay within 70-80% of what that property will appraise for. So you're not just going to jack that loan size all the way up to 60 or 70,000 if the property looks like it'll only appraise for 75 or 80, because the bank's only going to give you 70% of the appraised value. That's going to leave you needing to bring money to the table. So I know this is kind of a complicated thing, but if you saw it on paper, it wouldn't be nearly as complicated if we just like put numbers to paper on the deal. But with BRRRR, you are kind of aiming at a target. And so for those of you listening to this, don't get overwhelmed by this. Just know that most banks are going to probably want you to borrow at least $50,000 from them, right? And so try to aim to be above that with your purchase price plus your rehab. So you borrowed 55 from that private lender, 40 for the purchase and 15 for the repairs, and a lot of examples. That's good because the bank wants to loan you a minimum of 50, and you need 55, right? And so they can loan you that and hit their minimums, and then you're also able to hit yours. That I rarely run into the instance where I owe so little that the lender cannot do the loan. In fact, it really hasn't ever happened except briefly when the banks actually stopped lending during COVID. They started back again, but they stopped. So I went to some like more private lending institutions like Lending One or some of those big companies, and they had simultaneously jacked up their minimum loan sizes to like 75 or 85,000, which is like even higher than the banks. And that put me in a jam where I had to go to some different lenders for a couple of deals. It didn't really make a big problem in the end. But those minimum loan sizes are a thing to be aware of. So I hope that helps. Let me know what questions you guys have on the back end of that, because I know that was a mouthful. Another question I got was about due diligence. Okay, Austin, I see your question. Since you're live here, I will prioritize that. Do you do the rehab with the tenant in there, or would you just suggest ending things with the tenant the following month? It kind of depends on how extensive the rehab is, right? Is the rehab going to kind of put the tenant out, so to speak? Does the tenant want to stay? Like, are you going to raise the rent? You should be raising the rent, okay? Like, if you are going to put 15 into it, or I think you said 10, you should be able to raise that rent past $7.75. If you run your numbers and you can't, it doesn't look like you'll be able to raise the rent that much or at all, I wouldn't even recommend doing the rehab. There'd be no point in it. And I'd rather just hold on to that deal. In fact, what if you could just go to the seller and say, hey, I'll pay you the 41, but I'd like for you to hold the note for 3 years, and I'll pay you monthly payments of $400, principal only, or something like that. Then you could go in and just cash flow for a few years and keep the property as is, and then you could do a deal with a private lender at the end of that term. So if you can take on a cash cow that doesn't have a bunch of like ticking time bombs in it, where it's like the HVAC is 15 years old, the roof is 15 years old, the water heater's 12 years old, you know, like if there's a bunch of red flags, I wouldn't want to take that on under like seller financing terms, because if that stuff breaks, the funds to fix it have to come from you. So the beauty of BRRRR, the BRRRR method, is like the funds come from a private lender. Makes sense? Like you can get the funds right away from a private lender to fix it. The conventional mortgage world has a product called the 203K loan that I used one time to get an HVAC and a roof. And they rolled it into the mortgage, right? So instead of, I bought a house for like 73 that needed 8,000 in work, they just gave me a mortgage for 81, and they gave me the 8,000 in cash to buy a HVAC and a roof with. And that was cool because it only made my mortgage go up a little bit, and I could fix those things right away before, because I would have never had the cash to do it. It was the first house I ever bought. I wasn't even a real estate investor at the time. And I loved that they had that product. Private lenders are basically offering the same thing. It's like, hey, I will give you the money to buy it, and I'll give you the money to fix it up, and I'll just roll it into one loan, right? You can't get that if you just, do the 20% down thing and you buy it from the bank. They're not going to give you rehab funds. You can't get that if you structure a seller finance deal. The seller's not going to give you some money to do the repairs on his house, right? So the art of deal structuring requires getting some skills, and looking at each specific deal and saying, what is the play right here based upon this specific deal? So I would need to know more about the property, Austin, and specifically what all the state of all the major systems of the house are in order to really advise you. But if there's nothing like ticking time bomb, you try the seller financing to hold it for a while, or just do BRRRR now and go ahead and borrow the money from the lender, just get those updates done, and then refi with the bank and make sure you hit their loan minimum and move on. I would probably just do one of those two options on that deal without knowing anything else. So I hope that helps. And I got about 10 more minutes, guys, so please, if you have a question for me, post it in the comments right now. I did get a couple more questions via email that I wanted to tackle. One was about due diligence. It was about how, if you're buying properties long distance, Brian, how in the world do you ever know if it's a good house to buy, right? And so at a high level, what you do is you get it under contract first at the price you think you could pay. So notice I didn't say do due diligence first, get it under contract first with an inspection period, and then you get a contractor over there, you have them give you a bid. If that bid comes back like you thought it would, like on Austin's property, he thinks it's going to be $10K in repairs. get that under contract for 41, send the contractor bid comes back at 12,000. Okay, you're within, striking distance of where you thought you would be. Now I order a home inspection because the contractor didn't actually put on knee pads and crawl under the house and get up in the attic and check every electrical outlet, check the plumbing, check the electrical, HVAC. The contractor doesn't do all that, right? They just walk through and they're like paint, carpet, kitchen, bath, floor, 12 grand, like they're doing this like high level estimate. You need to pay the extra $300 to get a good home inspector to go in. I'm sitting in Colorado buying houses in the Southeast. I need an expert over there. And it's so worth it. It's like the best $300 you can spend for insurance on your deal, okay? And so I get that home inspection back. Then I look at the contractor bid where he says, I can get this thing rent ready for $12K. If the home inspector says the plumbing is busted and it needs repaired, but the plumbing was not in that contractor bid, we have a problem, right? Because the plumbing's messed up, but it's not included in that $12K. So you have to go back and get the contractor to go look at that plumbing and add it to your bid. And that might bring the bid up to $16,000 or something. And then you've got to look at your numbers and say, hey, I thought this would be 10, now it's 16. Can we still do this deal? Is it still a BRRRR deal? Can I still do it with none of my own money? Or how much money will I need to bring? Will it still appraise at, or how much money will I have to bring to the table when it appraises at what I think it will? So you look at the inspection, add anything necessary back to that contractor bid. But then you work with the contractor. I always say, hey, I was really hoping to be more like 10 on this thing. You're at 16. Where can we, find some wiggle room here? And then they'll say, well, technically if we did window units instead of an HVAC, we could save $3,000. And then I might go to the property manager and say, hey, is window units okay with this neighborhood? And they say, yeah. So that's awesome. I just cut it down from 16 to 13. This might sound like a lot of work, guys. It's really not. It's just asking a few questions to different people. And I'm whittling that bid down. I'm trying to get it around 10K, give or take, because I know that's where my numbers work. But I also want to make sure I don't buy a house that needs a bunch of stuff and I didn't fix it up, because then I'm just putting myself at risk. One day I'm going to get that call about that pipe bursting, and then I've got to suddenly come up with 5 or 6K. That's going to be stressful. I'd much rather try and work it into that initial rehab, borrow as much money as I can from a lender to get it done. Make sense? So then sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually go back to the seller. Like, let's say I have to be at 10K and the rehab is at 16K, so I'm $6,000 off. One way to create more gap is to go get a bigger discount on the purchase price. If you got 6K off the purchase price, that's the same thing as getting the repairs down 6K. You're just, it's the same net result, because the lender's just going to loan you a percentage of what they think it's worth, the private lender up front. So they don't care really how much of it goes to repairs, how much of it goes to purchase price. So you go to the seller and you can say, hey, you told me this place was in great shape. Here's an inspection. Here's a contractor bid that proves that it actually needs $16,000 in work. I know we were under contract for 41. I can't do this for any more than 35. And then they might come back and say, there's no way, but I could do 38 or something. Now you've just gotten $3,000 by asking. Negotiation, quickest money ever made. And so that's huge. And then now you're back down where you only need to find another 3K. And then you go back to the contractor and you say, well, could we put carpet in? Well, that would save $1,500. Okay. And I don't really recommend carpet, so don't do that. That's just an example. It's cheaper than the luxury vinyl plank LVP floors, but in the long run it costs you more, and it's not water. There's a lot of reasons why not to do it, but anyways, you're like finagling and trying to make that deal work. And I feel like it's these extra steps that I do that are the difference between me and somebody who does a deal and says, that didn't work for me, right? Someone who says, yeah, I tried that, but we were underwater or it was negative cash flow. Usually the difference between them and what I do is that they just didn't do much due diligence. I've seen people buy houses that are in like a flood zone because they didn't know how to look it up, right? It's like an obvious thing you would want to avoid. So they're obviously, if they're doing that, they're not doing a lot of the other stuff that they should be doing in order to, make sure they bought a good deal, okay? So due diligence is key, and this is also related to lead flow, okay? Another thing that I get asked a lot about is marketing, and marketing is so important. Like, you should be spending 80% of your time looking for deals if you don't have any deals, or 100% of your time, okay? If your rental portfolio is a business and you're trying to get it off the ground, well, when a business is new, the business owner should spend 80% of the time or more on marketing and sales. That is a credo that you should tattoo on your forehead or paint on your wall or something, okay? So stop screwing around trying to learn more about deal analysis on bigger pockets if you don't have deals to analyze. Create more opportunities for yourself, right? I had 4,000 postcards hit Little Rock last week, and my guy's tagging me right now in deals that he's working from that mailing, and I'm making offers, through him to those sellers, right? I want to create more and more of those opportunities for me so that when I go under contract and I do due diligence and the repairs are 10 grand more than I thought they would be or whatever, I'm not desperate to do that deal. And I can just say, well, peace, I can't do it then unless you give me a discount. I've got lots of other properties that I could bid on, so I'm just going to cancel our agreement. So desperation and emotion are other reasons that people fail because, and they stray from their logical numbers-based approach because they just want to do a deal, or they've put so much time into it already, or they worked so hard to find this one and they haven't found anything else in 6 months, I can understand why you'd want to try to force that to work, but it's still not a good idea to do it, okay? So I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I've got to run. If you guys want to talk to a member of our team about what it's like to work with me one-on-one personally and help you scale, if you want to get to 12 houses as fast as possible in as little time as possible, if you want to learn how to do it out of state like I do, then just drop a yes down in the comments. You can shoot me a DM, whatever's more comfortable for you, and just let me know you're ready. And let's talk, okay? Because as you can see, there is a decent amount to making sure that rental property investing goes well, right? There's all these little nuances to making sure you don't screw up, lose 40K on a rehab like one of my clients did. And so working with someone to do that, although it costs money, it makes you a lot more money in the end, and it saves you a lot more money because I'm not going to have you wasting thousands of dollars on repairs that you didn't need to do, as just one small way that you would get help from working with someone who's done this. So if you want some help, reach out, let us know. This is what we do, is what we love, what we're excited about. And I hope this Q&A has been helpful for you guys. I'm doing these every single Monday, not always a Q&A. Sometimes I'm just doing trainings, but it's Monday, 3 p.m. Mountain Time. So mark your calendars, hop in this group. You can ask me questions on camera if that's what's going to work best for you now and you don't want to go further than that as far as us working together. Cool by me. And thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you soon. Until then, peace.